It seems to me that motoring so-called journalism here in Australia has been mainlining the roto-rooter for far too long now, and it must be said, far too enthusiastically. This has rotted its teeth, clearly, and stories like that one are a direct result. In my view, this kind of shallow, toothless tigerism has to stop, because if the comments are anything to go by, ordinary car enthusiasts like you are hotly defecating in your DAX over this kind of thing. And this is how we rise up here in Australia, after all. We crack one off in our DAX proudly, and we hope the other dude smells it. It's quite effective. Read the comments on that story before somebody takes them down. I have screenshots if you're interested. It is a flat-out bloodbath down there. Some of the commenters are way more fearless and on the money than actual so-called journalists. This is therefore the most enlightening automotive news story I have seen all year. I'm not going to lie to you, dude. When I read those comments, I had actual leakage. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website, code. Over at the Lesser Expert, a recent editorial transplant named Damien Smye whipped up a cheeky 500-worder of conventionally quite boring industry news last Friday arvo. He has written a lot of news of this nature in his time too. No word yet on what he did exactly to deserve that, but anyway, Damo's piece audited the doyen, Stephen Collins, who was a cheese at Honda. Hey, it's what BYD called him, a doyen. Anyway, he was a cheese at Honda for 13 straight years. But recently he was teleported into the top Caucasian job at BYD Shitsville, despite Honda's apocalyptic long-term performance while he was there. Mr. Collins kicked off as the sales and marketing cheese at Honda back in, I'm going to say, 2009, and he quickly rose to the lofty role of the Chief Operating Officer until he found his ripcord pulled in 2022. During this time, Honda's sales imploded and free fell into the Challenger frickin' deep, dude. It was the full Titan submersible experience. And they boned their dealers, of which at least one sued them successfully for almost $14 million. Peak Honda occurred in 2007, roughly 60,000 sales then, yay them. In 2009, when the doyen joined the party, Honda achieved 41,443 sales. So pretty much the cancer had already started to spread at that point. But by the time the doyen swam bravely to his lifeboat and freedom in 2022, 14,215 sales. That is a staggering 66% reduction in sales, while the doyen was a senior exec at the local arm of the inventor of farking VTEC. It's quite spectacular. Like, this is a fact too. It actually happened. In the lucky 13 years that Honda Shitsville was running on, let's call it D-Tech or doyen power, sales collapsed. It was like a freaking neutron star. I would argue that in a sense, this is the doyen's greatest achievement while at Honda Shitsville. Boning the dealers was a close second, however. Unfortunately, although lesserexpert.com.au's entertaining news piece seems otherwise quite comprehensive. For some reason, the shit sandwich of Honda's local sales apocalypse did not actually manage to make its way into Mr. Smy's shitty 500-word almost news report. Imagine that. Perhaps that's why the comments from you are consequentially a comprehensive fucking bloodbath. So, well done you. #respect. Well done for pointing this somewhat glaring omission out, for highlighting it, and thereby being braver correspondents than actual paid-up correspondence, at least in my estimation. The audience clearly is not as dumb nor as lame as many so-called journalists seem to think. Now, for legal reasons, I'm going to point out explicitly that this report is my honest personal opinion. I'm going to explain why I formed the views I have in it and why it's in your interest to know as a consumer of online crap such as that. If senior shot callers at lesserexpert.com.au don't like what I say, I'll send them something to compensate, like a complimentary 36 grit suppository, which they can pivot enthusiastically on in the plane of yore until the discomfort subsides, which could take quite some time. The highlights of the comments bloodbath include Captain Obvious, who says, "This is inspirational. I now know that no matter how badly I flop in my current job, I can get another one easily. Certainly bad things happen in the commercial sphere from time to time. Sometimes there's a long run of this kind of thing. But if we can take anything away when unfortunate circumstances such as these inflict themselves upon us, no matter how apocalyptic things become, it doesn't have to be the end of one's career. Clearly. Imagine how impossibly comforting this knowledge would be to, I don't know, the senior torpedo maintenance supervisor on the Kursk, or the refurbishment director of the Grenfell Tower, the chief solid rocket booster propulsion engineer of Morton Fire Coal. That's not funny. That was a freaking tragedy. Or the senior vice president of applied physics and engineering at Chernobyl. A chap named Cascade now. So the dude who halved Honda's sales in 2 years is now in charge of BYD, who wants to challenge Toyota sales within next decade. Like, seriously? Am I missing something here? Quite, Cascadester. Quite, dude. I'm pretty sure Toyota is defecating in its DAX also presently down under. BYD could make its move at any time, like a battery-powered Shaolin monk. One never knows when they're going to strike. One won't even see it. Or maybe Toyota will just send them a get-well-soon card with sincere best wishes that these visions clear up soon. Now, look, I'm not saying the doyen, which is what BYD called him, incidentally, a doyen. I'm not saying he's not the guy to take them to frickin' infinity and beyond. BYD evidently sees itself as a Toyota challenger in just 4.5 years. I'm saying, on the evidence I've seen, BYD has a particular trajectory in mind, and Honda simply filed the exact opposite flight plan while the doyen was in charge. This is not all on the doyen, obviously. Personally, I don't think they make all that much difference. Like, who's the doyen? Who cares? To me, a monkey could do 90% of what the average COO of a car import operation actually does, except for being the scapegoat at that opportune time. Like, except for that, it's the easiest job in the world. Not everyone agreed, of course, with prevailing commenters' sentiment over at Lesser Expert. Oz David Z said, if they doubled the profit, then the end result is the same, as long as they hit the target, which is 2,000 units per annum. Well, I'd suggest that these if Honda got profitable speculations are likely just uninformed horse shit. Now, Honda has sold 6,557 cars to the end of May this year. That is 9% down on last year. So they're on track, if that's the right term, for about 15,700 sales this year, if they're lucky. Now, the cheapest shitbox Civic you can buy in Australia at the moment is $50,000 drive away. Imagine that. Cheapest Toyota Corolla, 36 grand. Go figure. Now, they've sold 382, I think, Civics so far this year to the end of May, which is down 26% on last year. 26%. The hits just keep on coming, don't they? More than 20 times more Corollas have been sold in the same time. Kind of says it all, doesn't it? I am amazed, frankly, that there are 382 people out there who failed that particular small car aptitude test. They'd probably vote also. There is simply no business model where a healthy mainstream car company selling 15,000 cars makes more profit than a healthy mainstream car company selling 60,000 cars or even 40,000. The one thing all car makers want is simply to sell more cars because of the economics of mass production. If Honda was actually onto some secret profitability source here, using the high-tech miracle of extreme downsizing and dealer boning, then I'd argue Toyota, Mazda, Ford, Kia, Hyundai, Mitsubishi, etc. would all be hatching similar grand plans to slash their sales by 75%, also post-haste. And I don't think they are. I would suggest, however, that the Venn diagram of A, people who can see that actually happening, and B, people with a heavy psilocybin dependency problem is most overlapped. Many of these tragic sufferers would doubtless also be Civic buyers, I suppose, like, just saying, dude. Cameron Bell, in the comments over at Lesser Expert, summed up audience sentiment efficiently and diplomatically, in my view. I am absolutely shocked that he managed to find another role. The agency model and the exorbitant pricing of the cars has destroyed Honda in Australia, in my opinion, compared to their heyday. Well said, Mr. Bell. I think that's what a great many people think, A, about Honda, and B, about Mr. Collins securing that top job at BYD. I was pretty shocked also, frankly, and for the reasons Mr. Bell outlined mainly. Honda's implosion is not accidental, obviously, but it is a tragedy. Like, I drove so many awesome Hondas in the 1990s and the 2000s. Anything Type R was just a bulletproof, inspirational weapon capable of revving its freaking double Ds off and feeling super lively, but also in control comfortably at the limit. And the S2000, I would still prefer one of those over a Boxster any day. 9,000 RPM will do that every day of the week. And having that 6,000 to 9,000 RPM power band available in every gear, upshifting or downshifting, thanks to the close ratio 6-speed gearbox, that's just engineering integrational brilliance right there. So I'm not a Honda hater. I just hate what they've become. And the obvious question here is, why did Lesser Expert omit these critical facts about Honda's shit sales performance under Mr. Collins from its somewhat incomplete news report? Like, Mr. Smye can't be aware of these facts. He's been doing this kind of thing for way too long, and he's worked on both sides of the street. It cannot be incompetence, surely. His official Lesser Expert bio is just up there if you'd like to pause and have a read. But be warned, he did work for Ford and he does own 2 Peugeots. So that could explain quite a lot. Lesser Expert wraps its third-rate news reports around advertising, of course. There are 5 ads on that page, roughly one for every 100 words you read, which, now that I think about it, is kind of worse than free-to-air TV. There's 1 for Audi, 2 for LDV, and Maserati, even though nobody buys them statistically, although the same could easily be said of Audi these days. The final one of those ads, at least on the version that I saw, just happened to be amazing, right? That's not like a total bad incentive for honest journalism, is it? End of year sales event, dude. Shit price promise with every vehicle sold. Hashtag no discounts. So you have to ask yourself, if we're all in this mad organ grinder monkey experiment here, who exactly is who in this model? There are 4 components in play, surely. The organ grinder, the organ, the monkey, and of course the audience. I'd suggest that it might be somewhat tempting for you to think of yourself as the audience, but that's not really the case when you think deeply about the model, is it? The audience pays the organ grinder to pump out that sweet, sweet music to make the monkey perform, because that's what everyone came here to see, right? The monkey, the star of the show. So, the audience here in this brave new media model are the car makers who advertise. They're the ones paying for the show. The media outlet, Lesser Expert in this case, is therefore the organ grinder because they're getting paid to put on the show. And their shit news is the organ being energetically ground. You can see where you fit in, right? You have to be the monkey, dude, because you're out there performing for the car makers when you click on the organ grinder's third-rate news. The curtains fly open and the car maker gets to see you there, down on your knees, hoovering up those sweet, sweet ads. This is exactly the show that they pay for, right? You are the monkey. Car makers want to see you out there performing by clicking on any crap that will serve up their ads. The organ grinder, well, he cranks up the organ, but he also makes quite sure not to play any raunchy tunes which car makers might deem offensive, such as, I don't know, the ballad of just how fucked Honda's sales have become. Like in this case. The compounding problem here for the organ grinder is, of course, 7 West Media, which has a $3 million-ish stake in lesserexpert.com.au. That's like Channel 7, essentially, right? There's a corporate structure, but essentially that's what it is. Now, you know Channel 7, which so proudly installed Australia's most decorated living soldier to run a big fat chunk of its operations. You know him because he's the guy who, on the balance of probabilities, murdered a handcuffed Afghan man by kicking him off a cliff, and who also executed a man with a prosthetic leg by shooting him in the back. That guy. On the balance of probabilities, it was all found in federal court. And I think we can all say that we've had general managers who are broadly inclined in that way. 7 is, however, that particular kind of operation, like in a widespread way. And I have worked for them occasionally. It does love those fat stacks of car maker cash too. I wouldn't want to be without them. Like, dude, how else is one going to fund all of those expensive defamation cases and the appeals unsuccessfully and then the damages? Having been at the coalface of this kind of situation once or twice or thrice even, and car maker tantrums that would be for complete disambiguation, not war crimes, I could see a picture emerging where 7's senior commercial muppet of advertiser reach-arounds or something might crack the absolute shits over having the truth piss off an advertiser such as, I don't know, Honda, or a potential advertiser such as, I don't know, BYD. So in that environment, a humble news editor might be forgiven for being in the crosshairs, potentially, and easily viewing discretion as the better part of valour here. Because if we were to get into this sort of trilateral go fuck yourself competition, which does happen when this kind of event rears its ugly head, and I am speaking from experience here, the journalist almost always loses. Dude, I have felt this pain. The other big loser, of course, is the monkey, right? i.e. you, dude, because you mistakenly assume that you're the audience, and you further erroneously think that the grinder is putting on the show for you, while car makers just generously pay for access to you, which is why the show appears to be free, but is in fact anything but. You might even presume that the show is quote unquote fair and balanced, right? If you don't think too deeply about what you're consuming. Only clearly, the show is at least somewhat fucked because you don't get to see the money shot. It was intentionally left out because there's a paper bag going under the table, which blurs the view, obviously. The only silver lining I can see here is that 2 or 3 dozen of you in the comments in this instance were, in my estimation, braver, better journalists than lesser expert managed to dish up to report this alleged news in the first place. This is a broken system, right? And I'm not just talking about lesser expert. I'm talking about news generally and the vested interests that you hardly ever see, controlling exactly what is generally omitted for convenience. You really should read those comments before they get taken down, especially if you've had a somewhat shitty day, because they are a universal frown upside down proposition. I'd love to see the face on Honda's marketing wonk when they see their ad juxtaposed against your outstandingly fearless journalism in the comments section just down below. I would pay to be the monkey at that show. Charlton Heston saw all this happening well before anyone else, of course. See, at some point on the spectrum of possible disrespect and maltreatment of the consumers of automotive and other news, even the monkeys eventually rise up.